Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Arna Sahu, host of Arna's News, where on this podcast channel, I aim to eliminate the gender gap in the STEM fields by featuring inspiring female professionals and highlighting their stories and accomplishments to further encourage girls. Today on episode 30, I am pleased to announce our guest, Preethi Narayanan. As a vice president of engineering at Afero and a chapter leader at Upward Women, she is an experienced technical engineering executive. As someone with a combination of calmness, intelligence, product knowledge, and business skills, she's an asset to any technology company in the world and rises above day-to-day fires while delighting end users and customers. Her specialties include leading organizations, consumer electronic products, embedded Linux-based software systems, and now IoT. So thank you so much, Preethi, for being here today. Before we start off with the questions, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you. I'm so delighted and proud to be here. This is a topic of my interest as well. So yeah, you covered a lot of things about my background, and I'll cover more as we go through your questions.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy I can talk to you today.
All right.
So tell us a bit about your career path.
Yeah, so that's a good question to start. And so if you look at my resume or LinkedIn, you would see a very typical traditional resume or somebody in my position. But my life experience is far from typical. So I was born in a remote village in rural India with a population less than 500. And so I had to walk about 5 kilometers back and forth to local middle school. And also I didn't have electricity until the age of 8th grade, about 11. And so you can imagine I knew nothing, absolutely nothing about engineering, STEM, or anything like that. But somehow I used to read the newspaper a lot, and there were these profiles of the top students and where they went to. And so I had this big dream somehow clicked in me that I want to do that. And I have no idea what any of it meant. That made me leave the village at the age of 14. And I went to a boarding school where I had the privilege to attend a prep school, which took me to engineering, one of the best engineering colleges, which led me to the Silicon Valley of India, Bangalore, and I started working for an international company, Motorola. Your generation wouldn't even know that because they're extinct now, but it was a really good technical company. And that took me to Chicago, and I was there for 11 years, worked as a hands-on individual contributor engineer for 11 years, more than 11 years. And then I wanted to move to a management role, build teams, and be more impactful through teams. So I switched to management, and I did several levels of management at a startup called Sensor Platforms, then Amazon, and then Intel, Eero, Roku, and now at Afero, I'm as a VP of engineering. Yeah, so that's kind of my journey.
That is so impressive. I'm so happy I can talk to you. I really like how, you went from basically not knowing anything to building out your own life for yourself. So that's super, super impressive.
Yeah, it was, it's not easy, but you can do it,
Yes. Okay, so what advice would you give someone wanting to pursue a career similar to yours? And do you have any tips to succeed?
Yeah, so my number one advice is that be patient with yourself. We are often so impatient with ourselves, not kind to ourselves. And when something is not working as you expect it to work, you blame yourself, and for me, I didn't know a lot of things that others knew because of the background and my background, but I didn't give that context to myself. So I was very hard on myself. Oh, I'm not good, or it's not working. And so it took me a long while to be patient with myself. But that's really key, especially when you're navigating through unusual or uncharted or curious where you are a minority. It's important to have that context and be patient and kind to yourself. Number two, take risk and jump in and face the consequences. Look, I didn't know what this meant. And it wasn't easy, but I wanted it, like you want it more than you fear it. And so you jump in and then face the consequences. I had to leave home at 14. I had to leave the country. I don't have many friends from those days. There are consequences, but if you want it, go for it. Don't hold yourself back. And once you are somewhere, give it all what you have. And most women think this a little bit wrongly. You think that you work super hard, you do all the deliverables, but there are other factors to be successful. So learn all that and give all you have, give it all and make it work. That's my takeaway.
That's very, very important. I mean, in the STEM industry and computer industry, a lot of people doubt themselves. Even as a
Yes.
student, I doubt myself 24/7. But I feel like being patient with yourself and knowing that it's all like a process is really important.
Yeah, because you may be, I don't know specifically everybody's background, but somebody who has been coding from standard 4, and then somebody is introduced to coding in the 12th class, it's not the same. So be patient, you will get there. Give that context to yourself and others.
Yes, and always making sure to take risks because opportunities will come to you if you take those risks.
Yes, jump in with both hands and arms in the air.
Yes. Okay, so what is a common myth about your profession that you want to debunk?
Yeah, so I may be talking from my generation point of view. I don't exactly know what your generation's myths are, but when I was growing up, even to this day, people think STEM and engineering is full of nerds. There's no life. They put on their headset and they don't talk to each other, and there's no fun in this. And then number two is that you can't make an impact to the world being an engineer. And let me go in the reverse order. The number two is so wrong because think about the pandemic we just lived through. We got through it because of all the technology we had built. We could work from home, we could do so much work because that's when, even to me, it made me realize how much I have contributed to the impact to day-to-day living. So I completely debunk that. You engineers make a ton of impact. In fact, the most important change in the way we live comes through engineering. And the number one is also wrong. I am by no means a typical nerd. I like very different things. I cannot watch science fiction. I don't play games, video games, but I'm a good engineer. So it's not a requirement, it's a self-selected group of people. So let's just mix it up a little bit, right? I mean, bring in diverse interest and diverse, different interests. That's the key.
Yeah,
Is
I
that
think yeah.
is that still the myth in your generation?
Yes, I think that is a big myth, especially the first one, where I actually created this podcast channel because a lot of my friends, they didn't know what STEM was and they thought
Uh-huh.
like the computer industry was just all men just coding away. Like that's a typical stereotype, so I
Yeah.
definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I read Jane Austen's novels as a girl, and I'm still like STEM a lot.
Yes,
So it doesn't have to go hand in hand.
it truly doesn't. And also the second one, I feel like engineering especially is one of the biggest industries.
It
Um,
is.
like it truly is because technology is ever evolving with ChatGPT and so many other things that are super cool. It's just
Yeah,
gonna
it is.
change the world.
Yes. If I have to do all over again, knowing what engineering is this time, I would still pick that.
Okay, if you could step into my shoes, what would you have asked yourself that I didn't?
Yeah, so I think one thing I personally struggled was I didn't know how to handle setbacks. and there will be setbacks. Life isn't fair, right? I mean, things will happen, things won't go as planned. To give you an example, my son was born prematurely. I had to attend to him, and I deprioritized work for a good 10 years. So life will happen. Sometimes you won't get the job you want, you won't get the role you need. There are so many setbacks going to be. The key is learn how to deal with them, in a personal sense. Build the tools that work for you. How do you build that resilience? I think very soon you all will be heading to college, and so you may not get the college you wanted to or the major you wanted to, but that's not end of the world by any means. So build that resilience. What are your personal tools to cope with it, and how to pivot, how to adjust? You may have to adjust your priority, change your original goals, but how do you still keep going and be good at it? I didn't learn this early on in my life, so I learned it in a very hard way. So that would be my advice to all of you. And it has to be personal, what works for you, not just a random advice. Really understand what works for you.
And that goes hand in hand with the patience, being patient with yourself and not always doubting yourself, even though you might have those setbacks, is really essential too.
It is, because our media likes, you would see as you start looking, getting into the industry, well, oh, 20 under 20, 30 under 30. Don't give too much to any of it. You may take 30 years, somebody else may take 20 years, but it's your life, it's your path, it's your journey. That's okay. You probably won't make it to 20 under 20, but who cares, right? I mean, so yeah, definitely have that resilience framework when you get through life.
Yes. And what are the best resources slash books that have helped you find your career path?
Honestly, I can't point to one single thing. I think that, again, back to my point, find your strengths, your interest, your goals, and then you recruit people who can help you, who trust in you, who is your sponsor and your board of directors, who will take you. And for me, working with peers has been the best. And I always find peers who are smarter than me, who can push me. And then I learn from them. We push each other. That has helped me a lot. And also go for experiences that teaches you a lot more. A book is okay, but you may not, it's somebody else's journey. You may not be fully getting in. Go through your own experience. This is back to taking risk and trying it out and learning through experience. That's what does really help me, not a single resource or book.
I see. And what do you think is the vital factor that shaped your career? What was your life before learning it, and what was your life after learning it?
Yeah, so I think I always had this drive. It wasn't my parents, it was just me. And I also, as a little girl, was able to dream big, Like if you take that girl from the village, the probability of me being where I am is like 1%, more or less. But I was able to dream big. And then I had that drive. So that's what helped me. And I don't think I realized that at one point in my life. I realized I had it much later in life. But one thing I did learn is, being patient with yourself, and also not seeking others' validation and advices. And when I realized that, I would say in my 30s, not even 20s, that helped me to achieve the same goals with less stress, and less pressure, and more enjoy what I'm doing. So I would say that's something I can say before and after. And I could always rely on my drive to get to where I wanted.
I see. I also have that drive.
Uh-huh.
Like when I was younger, like I had so much motivation, but after
Yeah.
quarantine, it just kind of like sunk. But
Uh-huh.
I can still relate to that, having that motivation and always wanting to dream big. Um,
Uh-huh.
ever since I was a
You're
kid,
doing this podcast, that's something big.
thank you. Ever since I was a kid, I had like the biggest dreams, and I still work towards them. And also staying true to yourself is very, very important. So you don't work for others and make yourself miserable, but work for yourself, make yourself happy.
Yes, yes. And then you would get there because, you want it, you're working towards it. And we often forget to enjoy it. That's the problem, So if you take the pressure off, the validation and the peer pressure, you will start enjoying it too.
Yeah, and then you'll actually feel happy instead of being miserable all day.
Exactly.
Yes. And what's one thing you wish you had known when you began your career?
I think one thing I didn't know, see, when you reach a junction, um, like your college or your career, people get to that junction by different routes, right? Different roads. And then you have this expectation, um, all of us should know exactly the same things. And, so when I didn't know a lot of things and I didn't know why. And I wish I had known that. You came through a different path. So you need to work on this, or you're already good at this. And then you would actually work towards it instead of you probably heard the imposter syndrome and you won't struggle from that if you understand that context. And then the other thing I didn't know, like when you're a student and you go through school, college, there is a linear relationship between the work you do and the success you get. But once you go to the career path, it's not always linear. You could be the working hard, but you still may not be you may not be making the changes. I mean, you may not be getting where you want to because there are so many other influential factors, which I completely failed to understand at the beginning of my career. So pay attention to that and work on them, whether it's communication, whether it's raising your hand, building networks, and sometimes just luck. And so put yourself in places where luck will, opportunities would come in instead of just hiding in your cube and, doing another 4 hours of work. So whatever that is, pay attention to that. I wish I had done that, I had known that. It took me a while to figure that out.
Yes. Because a lot of people in the STEM and computer industry specifically, they think that career growth is linear
It's not.
when it's not.
Yeah.
And it's like this common myth that people always think that, oh, once you're out of college, you'll get into Google and then boom, you made it.
Yes.
So it's
No, in fact, I did a keynote and the topic was your growth is not linear, you know. And because the hard work will take you, no doubt, but I would say it's just a necessary condition. It's not a sufficient condition because you could interpret it in any way. But the key is that you should understand the business context, what's important, what's impactful, and then that's what the organizations are looking for. So you need to be aligned with that and contributing to that to be successful.
Yeah, and also staying out of your comfort zone. I'm an introvert at heart, so it's kind of hard to talk to people, which is kind of surprising, but that is true. So staying out of your comfort zone and trying new interests because they
Yeah,
can take you out and maybe you can find something else that you truly enjoy.
absolutely. Get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, because that will also help you find your success.
Yes, it would, because sometimes you are the biggest blocker between you and your success, nobody else, and you tell stories to yourself, I am this, I am that, may not be even true.
Yeah, it also comes back to your mind and the patience,
Yeah.
always being patient with yourself, because I have that inner critic as well. So, I always overthink.
I, yeah, I learned music, and the second week I declared myself not capable of learning music and quit. And I don't know, unless you're some, genius, we will take years to learn music. Yeah, got to be patient with yourself.
Yeah, you have to. And how do you continue to learn in order to stay on top of things within your role?
So this is a bit natural to me. And I think this is where my impatience is a virtue, because I stay in a role, and if I feel that I am not learning anything, or I'm not pushing myself, or I'm getting stagnant a little bit, I have been moving around and going into places that are completely out of my comfort zones. And then you have absolutely no choice but to learn new things and come up to speed. I actually, this is my sixth or so job in the last 12 years. And so every time I start a new job, it's like a lot of learning, new domain, new people, new organization, new culture. And so I have to keep myself updated, and the new directions and all that. So, which has been very helpful. And if you're in the same company, I even within the same company, I changed within 3-4 years. I would change to a different team, and that is like it's like a forcing function, to learn and keep yourself updated. In fact, just before the podcast, I was reading a whole bunch of papers because I need to go and make a decision on Monday, and I don't know enough. So I have to learn this, right? So I put myself in positions where it is a requirement, and that's how I personally thrive. So this has been pretty natural for me.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to the drive to wanting to learn more and being
Yes,
curious. And
yes,
I think that's really cool how you're able to like move positions and then always want to learn, because a lot of people, once they get there, they're like, oh, I have this role and that's it. Like, I'll just stay here for the next 5 years and then retire and that's it. But then you
yeah,
always want to drive yourself to want to learn more and put yourself in positions where you have to do that. So that's really, really impressive.
it is. It comes with some, um, consequences. I tell you what, my previous role at Roku definitely paid me a lot more. Um, and I took a job at a startup. I took it because I wanted this role. I wanted this learning and this experience. And I'm thoroughly enjoying it right now, and I'm getting what I want. And I'm okay to take the pay cut, because this is how you kind of grow. So growth is again in different ways, right? It's financial, career wise, knowledge wise, intellectually. So you need to pick and choose what you want. Some of my colleagues are very, very, very clear. Their growth means it's financial, so they keep going, which is fine, totally fine. But this is again back to knowing what you want, and then jumping in and being okay with the consequences that come with it. And every time I change role, it's extremely uncomfortable for a few months, but it comes with that choice.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back with being true to yourself, as it'll make you yourself happy instead of being miserable your whole life.
Right, right. If somebody had forced me to this role, I wouldn't have enjoyed this. This is me doing it to myself.
Yeah. And do you have any quotes or mottos that you love to follow and would like to share?
Again, surprisingly, I don't. So here's the problem with the quotes and mottos, because when somebody came up with that, they had a journey and they had a context, and they said that. And sometimes when you read it, it totally looks okay on paper. But you didn't experience that, and you can't internalize it. And as a young girl, I often rebelled a lot, and I did not like people with their conventional sayings or mottos or anything for the same reason. I didn't really understand that. But as I got older and I went through my own experience, I look around and a lot of the conventional wisdom is so true. It's just that it didn't resonate with me when I was young because I didn't have that experience. And so, for example, I learned that progress, not perfection, much later in my life. Also, it was there all around. People always said that, but I didn't understand that. I didn't internalize that. Yeah, so because of that, I don't think if something resonates with you, go for it. For example, something like do what you can with what you have, where you are. That is something I always I resonated with that because given my background and circumstances and constraints, that was a very applicable for me. But yeah, when you hear something, and again, in growing up in India, we used to just blindly believe the quotes from great people. You don't have to think about it, give it some thought and see, is that matching with your values, your interest, your true self? If it does, great. Otherwise, find your own.
Yeah, I mean, as a kid and still now, I guess I am rebellious. So I totally get that. And actually, before the pandemic, I actually didn't really like school. I don't know, something was like going on with me. And then after COVID, I actually had a bigger appreciation for school and like everything. So these quotes that I always looked at, I didn't really agree with them. I didn't resonate with them, but now they kind of like spark a moment in my life when I was like, oh, that's what I was feeling before. And
Yeah,
kind of like that self-growth and reflection.
it is. This is why, it's an experience, it's a journey. It's like people can explain to you what headache is. But if you didn't get a headache, you don't know what it is, right? So a lot of, in India, at least when I grew up, there was a lot of pressure to embrace and understand this big quotes from great people blindly. And I really rebelled because I did not understand that. I'm not getting it. Sorry. So, but now a lot of them make sense for me, because I went through my own journey.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here, Preethi. Before we end off, would you like to say any last words to the audience?
I am reachable. You have my LinkedIn profile. Feel free to share it with the transcript. I'm very passionate about getting more girls into STEM, and a diverse interest and diverse personalities, and making big impact in the world. So if I can help in any way, please reach out to me.
All right. Well, that concludes episode 30. If you want to know more about how I relate to these amazing topics, then stay tuned for upcoming episodes. A free way to support this show is by leaving it a 5-star rating and a review on the player you're listening to. Let me know what you enjoy about this podcast, as it's a chance to tell me what you love about the show, and it helps others discover it too. Once again, thank you for finding me, and I hope we stay in touch with each other. Tito, you're listening to Arna Sahu, the host of Arna's News. Toodles!